Everyone says Brennan Lee Mulligan is a genius DM, and although he is a great improviser and good at voices, so is Matt Mercer and plenty of others. So why do his games in particular feel so deep and powerful? The truth is, Brennan isn't just a dungeon master. He has what I would call a superpower that I think most people are missing. And in this video, I will show you what it is and how he uses it so you can steal the same ideas to make your own games unforgettable. Okay, so if it's not just the performance, what makes him so good? Let's eliminate what everyone talks about first. He is an incredible improviser. That is true. He spent many years as a professional comedian performing and teaching improv with a group called Upright Citizens Brigade, which is an iconic name in the world of comedy and improv. And this gives him the ability to pivot immediately when players do something unexpected. It is an incredibly useful skill to have as a DM, and it does a lot of heavy lifting. But being an improv god does not give you the ability to make people cry. So is it the voices then? I'm not gonna spoil anything here, but yeah, let's just say Brennan played many memorable NPCs with cool voices over the years. But once again, there are tons of great voice actors in the D&D actual play space. Matt Mercer is arguably even better at this. And even though I love Critical Role and everyone in the cast is incredible at voices as well, whenever I watch Brennan DM, there's always something more to it. Right. So maybe it's the way he preps. Brennan has a very cool approach that's all about making toys, where he creates building blocks to help him improvise. I might make a video about it soon, because I think it's the best way to go about prep too, but I'm certainly not as good as him, so there must be something else. So what is it? What's Brennan's secret? It had me thinking for a while until I zoomed out and stopped focusing on the way he runs the game at the table and took a look at the bigger picture, at what his campaigns are about. I then realized Crown of Candy, one of the campaigns he ran with Dimension 20, isn't just Game of Thrones with food people. Instead, it deals with rebellion and whether it can be justified to rebel, just like Fantasy High, another Dimension 20 show is not simply high school drama with magic, but about creating meaning after you leave the belief system you had when you were younger. And it started to click into place. The topic of world building is one of my favorites, and it's fun and easy-ish to create a world. But we all tend to focus on the cool names and whether our rivers flow correctly and how we're gonna make the elves not so Tolkien-y. But Brennan takes a different road, which gives us the start of the answer we were looking for, hiding in plain sight in his background. Brennan Lee Mulligan is smart. He is I went to college at 14 smart, and there he got a philosophy degree. He studied ethics and morality in particular under Professor Tom Davis, who had a massive impact on him at a young age. And in his own words, this is an actual quote from an interview in Rolling Stones magazine I found. When he starts working on a new campaign, the first place I start is ethics and people and human nature, and what it means to be alive. People joke about philosophy degrees. Baby, I'm putting that degree to work every goddamn day. This, combined with the fact Brennan keeps a picture of his late philosophy professor above his desk, made me think, alright, yeah, this stuff really matters to him. But I think it would be a mistake to stop at, oh, philosophy background, yeah, cool, that explains Brennan's superpower. It's just not enough. Because reading old German dudes does not automatically give you the power to make people cry over food people dying. I know philosophy is more than old German dudes, but you get my point. The important bit isn't that he uses philosophy, but how. Because he is not lecturing or explaining Plato during encounters. The philosophy bit is transparent. He smuggles it into the game through 3 specific mechanisms that are easy to miss. So let me show you exactly how each one works, starting with the foundation. But before I go on, I want to share something with you. When I look at my analytics, I see many of you guys watch these videos but aren't subscribed to the channel yet. So I would like to make a deal with you. If you could do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button, I will work obsessively to make these videos better and better and better. I'm still a small channel, and it's hard to overstate how much this helps. When the channel gets bigger, it means more reach and ultimately more resources for me to help you guys have more fun playing this game we all love. Alright, so let's dive back in with that foundation I was telling you about. When DMs choose to use a philosophical idea as part of their games, it's often used as a theme. It could look like this campaign is about justice, for example. It's a coating you sprinkle on top for flavor. It makes the game a bit cooler and gives it some depth, sure, but the game stays a game, and the goal is what we call escapism. We use the game as a way to escape our reality. It's not bad. I've done it a lot, and it's a totally valid way to play D&D. But Brennan has a different approach. In another interview I found, he says, "I'm not trying to escape shit," and explains that he uses fantasy to explore real emotions and process the heavy realities of life. In his approach, fantasy becomes a map for reality. Instead of distancing yourself from reality, you use the game to see reality in a different light. By doing so, Brennan establishes purpose fast and gives the game a rock-solid foundation to build on. Let's look at a few examples from his D&D career. The Unsleeping City, another Dimension 20 campaign, looks like fantasy in New York, but it's actually about urban alienation under late-stage capitalism and the feeling of being surrounded by millions of people but still feeling completely alone. In Crown of Candy, you could just think, he's a comedian, this is just Game of Thrones with food people, ha ha ha. But the campaign is actually asking, what legitimizes political authority? When is rebellion morally justified? How do religious institutions manipulate populations? So, how does that even work? Well, here's what I think is happening. If someone said, let's explore political philosophy in our next D&D game, you might think, whoa, okay, I just wanted to kill goblins, and put your guard up. But because your brain processes Food Kingdom differently than medieval monarchy, I think the absurd premise, literal food people, works like a Trojan horse. It feels silly at first, which lowers your guard, which then gives Brennan the opportunity to explore power, oppression, legitimacy, class warfare, etc. The players get immersed in political philosophy without even realizing it at first. And that's a heavy field, dealing with real current issues, which multiplies the emotional impact of the game. The same mechanism appears over and over again in Brennan's games. Fantasy High does this with existentialism, which is a rich philosophical movement that deals with the idea that your nature isn't fixed at birth and that you define yourself through choices. The high school drama bit makes it feel like comedy, but philosophy is everywhere. Without spoiling too much, in that campaign, at some point, one of the characters uses the Spirit Guardian spell, and the Guardians take the shape of religious philosophers quoting texts during combat. Later, her faith starts shifting, and they become philosophy students. Mechanics and meaning merge and are her literal power source. So that's the first mechanism, philosophy as foundation and purpose instead of decoration. But the foundations are indeed required. What do you build upon them? To see how he actually does this at the table, we need to take a look at the way he thinks about D&D's rules themselves. While doing research for this video, I found this quote from Brennan that recaps how he thinks about game systems. He says, calling D&D a combat-oriented game would sort of be like looking at a stove and being like, this has nothing to do with food. Clearly, this is for moving gas around. People say that because D&D has so many combat mechanics, you're destined to tell combat stories. I disagree. I need a game to do that for me while I take care of emotions and relationships because that is intuitive and I understand it well. I don't intuitively understand how an arrow moves through a fictional airspace. To him, the game system should handle the simulation of non-intuitive things, combat physics, spells, and movement through space. This frees him and the players to focus on what is intuitive, emotions, relationships, and moral choices. And this plays a central role in his philosophical approach. Brennan uses rules as written for the most part, and often rolls in the open, or announces DCs before players roll, which creates a foundation of trust. And this matters because when the mechanics are stable and fair, the link between choice and consequence becomes crystal clear. If players think you're fudging roles or changing rules, their moral choices will feel meaningless. Why spend time thinking through each decision if the DM is just gonna make whatever happen anyway? Reliable mechanics means that when players roll, consequences follow logically, and their choices carry actual weight. It matters for the philosophy part because if you can't trust the system, then moral choices become about gaming the DM instead of wrestling with the dilemma itself. But when the mechanics are fair, the philosophy hits you on a personal level. It's your choice and your values being tested, not just a story you're passively part of. So, mechanics for simulation, philosophy for meaning, clean strategic division, but there's still one piece missing. Why does philosophical play create such deep emotion? And to explain this, we'll have to visit the incredible world of neuroscience. Quick disclaimer before I go on. I did take the research for this video seriously, but I'm not a neuroscientist, so if you are one, please feel free to give everyone more details in the comments. Alright, so there's this influential theory in moral psychology called dual process theory, developed by Joshua Green, a Harvard psychology professor, and his colleagues. The basic idea is that we have two systems in our brains to process information. One system is fast and automatic. It's driven by emotion, empathy, and immediate gut reactions. The other is slower and more deliberate. It's the reasoning part that calculates consequences and thinks through implications. And moral dilemmas are unique because when you face one, both systems activate at once. Green's brain imaging studies showed that when people faced what he called personal moral dilemmas, like the famous trolley problem, where you have to sacrifice someone to save others, you see activity in emotion-related brain regions, but you also see activity in regions associated with conscious reasoning and problem solving. Now, it's worth saying this is debated, and not all researchers agree on exactly how these systems interact, and some argue it's more complex than just emotion versus reason. But what's consistent across the research is that moral choices create this kind of cognitive conflict. Your gut is pulling you one way, while your reasoning is pulling you another. That conflict is what makes these choices memorable, and unlike in a video game, where outcomes are pre-coded and the developers already decided what happens, or in a book, where you have no agency at all, in a tabletop role-playing game like D&D, the uncertainty is real. Now, here's where I think Brennan's approach amplifies this effect. When a philosophy-trained DM who values transparency presents a dilemma to his players, he doesn't know what they'll choose. And that unpredictability mirrors real moral life. Players are not picking from a dialogue tree, but actually working through the problem. And it made me think about this. There's this idea in philosophy called narrative identity, developed by Paul Ricoeur, an influential 20th century French philosopher. To summarize, it's the idea that personal identity isn't just something you have, but something you construct through the stories you tell about your life. Who you are emerges from the accumulated narrative of your choices and experiences. D&D and other TTRPGs put this principle in action, but compressed and intensified. Each session adds to your character's narrative. A redemption arc in session 20 recontextualizes failures from session 3. Your accumulated choices converge into your character's identity over time. This is where Brennan's philosophical approach hits different. In a lot of campaigns, the identity we build for our characters comes from tactical patterns. I'm the person who always scouts ahead, or I'm the person who charges into battle. And they matter, sure, but they're not as deep. Instead, Brennan's games force his players to build identity through value choices. I'm the person who chose mercy over revenge, or I'm the person who sacrificed innocent lives to stop a greater evil. Ethical commitments instead of tactical decisions. They define who the characters are at a more fundamental level, and the players are suddenly building a person through repeated ethical choices. Over a whole campaign, the players have inhabited the character's perspective, and because they made those choices over time, through difficulty and with consequences, it feels real and creates true emotional investment that hits hard. And the cool thing is, it's safe. When you take this approach, the stakes like death and broken relationships feel real, and the moral reasoning you go through because you are playing through it is real. But you're not harming anyone. You get to practice being the kind of person you want to be. In Brennan's case, because his antagonists embody philosophies rather than just being bad guys, players learn to think systematically. You can't just kill the villain and solve the problem. You have to understand the ideology underneath and dismantle it, which is exactly how the big, bad, real-world problems work. They tend to be systemic. So that's my take. Brennan's secret is that he is not just a dungeon master, but a de facto philosophy teacher who figured out that D&D is the best teaching tool ever invented. You're not going to become Brennan overnight, but you can start asking different questions. Start small. Replace what happens next with what does this mean, for example. And if you want to take things further, there are incredible free philosophy resources out there. My favorite one by far is the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, which taught me so much over the years. Beware of the Wikipedia effect where you enter the website and stay there forever, but I promise it's a very cool website. Go there, try to find a theme that resonates, and try to imagine how it would work in a D&D campaign. Now, if you want to start creating this kind of moral complexity in your games right away, I actually made something specifically for that. It's called After the Fall, a collection of 15 morally gray NPCs you can drop into any campaign. Each one has secrets, conflicting loyalties, and the kind of impossible choices that make good versus evil feel too simplistic. You can get it by itself, but it's also included in my Patreon, along with all my video scripts, free tools, and access to private channels on my Discord server to help you become a better DM. Links in the description if you want to check it out. Start with one question per arc, like do ends justify means, or when is rebellion justified? Create situations that will have players answer them through action and enjoy the new meaning it creates in your games. But no matter what philosophical question you explore, you need strong situations to keep it interesting. And the most important of those is the first one. So if you're tired of starting your campaigns in a tavern, click on this video next and I will show you the surprising things that happen when the villain wins in session 1. Because it's a great way to get your game going fast.